One of the main reasons that most podcasters don't see the level of growth and success that they want in their show is because they are focused on the wrong thing first. In this episode, I want to help you understand where you need to put your focus in order to get the most growth. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is Alec Hassan here with Impact Podcaster Academy. Basically, here we help podcasters create more impact and income with their show without needing a large audience and without needing to have sponsors and dealing with all that hassle. So earlier, I was thinking about this time I had hired a coach to help me in the early days of starting up my content creation stuff online. And the coach's his name is Jose Vargas, really awesome guy. And we were breaking down some numbers of things. He was kind of like, yeah, so Alec, man, tell me about your goals. Like, revenue goals, give me some exact numbers. What do you want to be hitting every month? And I remember at the time I was like, well, if I could get like 5,000 every month, just like on the side with like selling my book and this and that, that'd be pretty awesome. And this was back in like 2020-ish. And he was like, okay, man, so how many sales are you getting now? I was like, well, maybe like 5 sales a week with my book. He's like, all right, doing the numbers. And he's like, and of those 5 people, how many people buy more things from you? I was like, well, maybe like 1 out of 10. And he's like, okay. And when they do, what do they typically buy? Like, what's the average number of what they buy? And I was like, well, the average number probably comes out to like extra $25, $30. He's like, okay, we're crunching the numbers. And he's like, and your goal is to get to 5,000 a month? I was like, yep. He's like, okay. So I did the numbers here. And at the time when I was selling my book, it was a free plus shipping offer. And so basically people just pay for the shipping and they get the book. I don't make any money from that, but it really helps to grow your email list. And it also provides you an opportunity to showcase some of your other products and your different services to those people. They're higher quality leads as well, because they already trust you enough, pay for the shipping to begin with. Then when they see your other products, they're more likely to get those. So he was like, so you're not making any money from the 5 people a week? I was like, well, yeah, I'm not profiting any money from those 5 people. And he's like, and it takes about 10 people to get the one person that spends $30. I was like, yeah. He's like, so with that math, you profit $30 every 2 weeks. In a month, you make $60. I was like, huh, yeah. And he's like, so to go from $60, 5,000, essentially you'd have to like 100x whatever it is that you're currently doing. I was like, huh, yeah. That makes sense. Like, so how can you 100x that? I was like, well, maybe if I like change like the color layout or I was thinking of doing a little bit of rebranding. It's just funny. Like, I'm laughing now because I'm like, dude, it's a numbers game. Like, look at the numbers. Like, whatever you're spending in ads, if you spend 100 times more, then you would hit those numbers. Like if the goal was $5,000 in revenue, then I wouldn't even need to 100x it. It would be way less than that. But if I wanted 5,000 in revenue, then 100xing what I'm doing would get me like pretty close. Assuming that I make $60 a month and you 100x that, then that comes out to $6,000. But it was just funny because even with that, he was like, and he's like, all right, man, so let's say, we were to 100x everything that you're doing. Would you even be able to sustain that? I was like, not really. I don't think so. And you might be wondering, like, okay, so like, what's the moral of this story, dude? Like, come on, Alec, what does this have to relate to my podcast? And the way that it relates is like, I want to ask you, like, if your plan is to get sponsors, even though my show, like, I want to help people, I want to show you other ways to grow and monetize your show without getting sponsors. But let's say you want to grow it to the point where you do get sponsors. If a sponsor were to come up to you right now, they're like, hey man, I want to put my ads on your show. How many episodes do you upload a week? And you're like, well, just 1. Like, they're like, oh, okay. If we asked you to bump it up to 2 to 3, could you do that? Like, oh, dang, maybe. Like, okay, well, we'll put that on the back burner for now. How many downloads do you get? And it's like, maybe like 50 a month. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's not a lot. But it's okay. We'll put that on the back burner for now. What is it that you offer your audience? Why do they come to you? And then you're like, oh, well, I do my podcast because I love talking about these different topics. All about these things that I really enjoy, and I really do it for me being able to just do what I like, And then they're like, the sponsors, they're hearing that. They're like, oh, this dude's, he's more focused on himself than he is on his audience. And they're like, okay, if we were to tell you to do 10 times the work that you're doing now, that way you can get 10 times the amount of downloads, and you're to go from 1 episode to 3 episodes a week, would you be able to do that? It's like, I don't know. I don't think I would. And if you're in that space, like, recognizing that is the first step of winning the battle, of actually being able to get something like sponsors or actually being able to grow your podcast. Because most of the time, it's both a combination of not having the right focus in the right areas, as well as not putting in enough of the work. If you don't have the right focus in the right areas, you might be putting in a lot of work, but it's not the work that needs to be putting the work in the wrong areas. So doing things like the rebranding or working on the photos or the logos or spending really, really long trying to like dial in the audio level so it sounds like even super crispy. It's like, to be honest, your audience, if it's great content, they're not going to care about that. If it takes you multiple hours to upload a single episode and you feel like you can't do that multiple times throughout the week, then it's probably a sign that you're spending too much time on that work. And then on top of it all, a lot of the times I hear it over and over again, and I'm not trying to sound rude here, mainly just trying to create this kind of like wake up call. So then you're kind of like like, oh, okay, I can see now where I can make these improvements. But like I was saying before, with the metaphorical story of the sponsors being like, yeah, what do you offer your audience? Most podcasters don't offer their audience anything. They are creating these shows for themselves. So if, for example, someone were to be like, yeah, would just ask you like, what is it that you provide your audience? It's all centered around what you're doing for you. Like, sure, maybe you started because it was something that you felt passionate about, but that passion has to be focused in a way where it's benefiting the person listening. If it's only benefiting you, that's only one person that you're helping. How in the world do you expect to have that one person grow to thousands or hundreds or even dozens? You know, if it's all like, oh, it's not about the numbers, but if it's just you that your episodes are benefiting, you can't grow that. So shifting that thought to, oh yeah, like how am I helping my audience? Like, what am I offering them? And if someone were to ask, why do you do this? Then you can say, oh, it's because it's something that I love. But what you do is for the audience. Why you do it could be totally like, then you can talk about, because now people are focused on like, well, why is it that you're doing it? So if someone were to ask me like, yes, what does your podcast provide? And it's like, oh man, well, did you know that like a majority of podcasters who start their podcast never get to the point of being able to monetize their show? And because of that, they give up. And it's not like they give up within the first month or two. Like, these podcasters are committed. They're spending like 2 or 3 years on their show, creating content, and they're not seeing the results that they want, and they give up. And it's terrible. At Impact Podcaster Academy, we want to help podcasters be able to grow their show, monetize it in a shorter period of time than it would take to get a sponsor. Plus, they don't need a large audience even to get started. So by being able to monetize their show without having a large audience, without needing sponsors, gives podcasters financial freedom to be able to invest in their show, to grow it the way they want, and they get to do the things in their podcast that they want to do. It gives them more freedom to do the things that they actually like when it comes to podcasting. So if you're asking me like what my show is about, that's what it's about. And then if someone were to ask like, okay, but yeah, so like what got you started into doing it? Like, why do you do it? And I'd be like, you know what? I do it because it's super, like I think it's fantastic to be able to, you just pull up a microphone, talk all this value into it, and you can get it out there super fast and super easy. And people are able to be changed by it. I like that part. Like, that's pretty cool. And on an even more personal note of it, making videos and stuff was just way too complicated. I can do it, but I just don't want to spend all that time and energy into it. That's like what I'm talking about there. Like, a lot of people, they're just only focused on themselves when it comes to the show. They're not focused on how they're contributing value to their audience and to their listeners. And I want you to like kind of ask yourself like, okay, if someone were to come to you and they'd be like, hey, wow, you got this podcast about this thing. What can I buy from you? Like, what can I buy from you that's related to that? You don't have anything you could offer? What I would say is the first thing you should focus on is, can you offer? And if you don't know what you can offer, then the first thing you should focus on is, okay, what does my audience actually want? And if you don't know what your audience actually wants, then your first focus should be to talk with your audience, to figure out what they want. If you don't know who your audience is, then you got to go around and you got to talk to people online to figure out who your audience is. Can I see how that train of thought works? And so another thing is, someone were to come up to you right now and they're like, yeah, we want to sponsor your show, but you got to get your downloads up by 10, like you got to 10x your downloads. Do you even know how you could do that? Do you know which content brought in the most downloads? If you had to simplify down the entire process so you could just hammer out these episodes and put it out there. If each episode, let's say a sponsor is like, we only sponsor shows that get a minimum of 500 downloads on average every week. You look at you're looking at your downloads, and on average for each episode, it's like 20 downloads. And all you got to do is just do the math, like 500 divided by 20. And if you were to actually like do that number, then you would figure out like, oh, well, I would have to upload 25 episodes a week. There's only 7 days during a week. Even if I were to upload every single day, it's only 7 episodes. I'm not able to hit that number. And it's like, good. Like, not good that you can't hit the number, but good that you're realizing this. This means you could figure out other areas as well, how you can get more downloads on your show. So let's say you upload 5 days a week. You'd go from essentially having 20 downloads in that week. Like, if every episode only gets 20 downloads and you only upload once a week, you'd go from 20 downloads a week to 100 downloads a week. And let's say you only send out 1 email during the week and it brings 10 people on your email list to your show. But what if you were to send out 2 or 3 emails? Then you would be getting like 20, 30 more people. And if you were to increase the amount of people on your list, maybe instead of 10 people per email, now it goes up to 15, and then it goes up to 20, and then it goes up to 30. And now you find yourself like, wow, so if I have enough people on my list where I can send an email and 50 of those people end up going and downloading the episode and listening to it, if I were to send 10 emails, I just hit 500 downloads. Kind of see how that math works? So it's essentially like figuring out what the core goal is and asking yourself like, okay, if I were to get that, would I be able to do it? Or if it were to present itself, how would I be able to achieve that? So for my example that I was saying with the story earlier on, I realized I was like, well, to be honest, I'm getting the 5 book orders every week, but if someone were to, like, if it were to 100x, that's now 500 book orders every week. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I was like, because I'm the one who's getting the order, I'm getting the person's name, their email address, their physical address, because it was a physical book at the time, and I'm typing it in, copying, pasting, hitting submit for the order and sending it out. And even for like the 5 orders, I'm like, that's a lot of my time. And to increase that to 500 orders, I was like, there's no way I could do that. Then I had to start asking the right questions of, okay, well, how could I do that? And then I found a company that does the entire thing. They automate it. Every time an order comes through, that information gets sent to them. And then with that information, they do it all themselves. All I have to do is just send them the books. And if someone's address comes through and they weren't able to pinpoint it, be like an actual address, like someone mistypes it, then they just ask me to ask the person, and then I ask the person, and then fix the address and send it back. And it really like made the process of sending these things out much, much easier. But it started by asking the right questions. And you got to figure out what questions you should ask. You got to figure out which areas you should be focusing on. And then when you do put in more work, you'll be putting in more work in the right areas. So I hope that this episode was very inspirational to you guys. Hope it was able to kind of like shed some light on some things and allow you to see like, oh, wow, you know what? Maybe this is more doable than I thought it was. Maybe I was just focusing on the wrong areas of things and putting way more time into stuff that's not bearing the fruit that I would like. And now you can start asking yourself the right questions and getting yourself on that path towards getting way more growth and more quickly getting on the path towards monetizing your show. And if you'd like resources and things for how you can do that, you can check out impactpodcasteracademy.com. We got some great stuff on there. And make sure to click like, subscribe, all that jazz. And thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.